Hi, this is going to be part 1 of a 3-part series on how to prepare your grain spawn for growing gourmet mushrooms. Some things you're going to need are, you're either going to need some of these filter patch bags. You can get these at any mycology website. If you're using these, you're also going to need some zip ties, or if you have an impulse sealer, just something to seal these bags up. If you don't want to use these bags, you can also use mason jars. If you're using mason jars, you're going to need to improvise a filter on the lid, which you can do by poking a hole in the lid and stuffing it with polyfill. It's polyester fiber. You're going to need a large pot for cooking your grain. You're going to need a scale, and of course you're going to need your grain or whatever you're using as spawn. Personally, I use wild bird seed, and I put corn cobs in it too, crushed corn cobs. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do is weigh out your grain. It's going to differ depending on how many jars or bags you're doing. Personally, this is my recipe that I use. I use 1 pound of crushed corn cobs and 2.5 pounds of bird seed, and that gives me enough to fill about 2 or 3 of these. Again, it's going to depend on what you're using, the size of your bags, the size of your jars. It's just all going to depend for you, so you're going to need to figure out your own of what to do. But I'm going to turn my scale on here. Put your pot on. Alright, and you're going to want to make sure you zero out your scale, or else it'll really mess up your measurements. And I am going to measure out 2.5 pounds of bird seed. Now you can use any sort of grain you want. You can use anything you can imagine. I would avoid using things like flax because they get really slimy when you cook them. But a lot of people use rye grain and crushed corn. There's lots of things you can use, but I prefer bird seed because it's cheap. But when I use bird seed, I have to take out the sunflower seeds because they tend to increase my chances of contamination, and I'll show you how to do that later. But right now I'm going to measure out 2.5 pounds of bird seed, and I'll get back to you when I do that. Okay, I've got my bird seed weighed out. It's got 2.7 pounds, that's close enough. Since I'm using wild bird seed, since I have to remove the sunflower seeds, I always weigh about ½ pound extra of what I actually need. If you're using regular grain, this next step I'm about to show you, you can completely skip. But if you're using wild bird seed with sunflower seeds, you're going to want to, this is the way you get the sunflower seeds out. You're going to need to fill the pot with water. It doesn't depend if it's hot or cold for this part. While that's filling up, we're going to grab a sieve. You could probably use a strainer if it has really small holes, but I prefer a sieve. And I don't know how well you can see this, but the sunflower seeds are floating on top, and the other seeds that we want are down there on the bottom. So this is the way we're going to separate them out. Alright, once you get the pot filled up, what you're going to want to do is stir it. Just take any spoon and stir it up. This is going to, any sunflower seeds that are trapped on the other ones, under the other ones, are going to pull it up to the top. Just give it a nice vigorous stir. back to the sink. This is the way I set up my sieve. You don't have to do it like this, but it works really well. And you just dump the sunflower seeds into the sieve. What we have left over in here. There's a few sunflower seeds. So I'm going to repeat that process 2, maybe 3 times till I get 90% of the sunflower seeds. It's not a big deal if there's a few left over. But I'll get back to you after I do this 2 or 3 more times. Okay, I got the sunflower seeds out. What I do is I just feed them to my rabbits. If you don't have rabbits, throw them outside for the squirrels and birds. I'm sure they'll love you. Then you want to put your pot back on your scale. Make sure you zero it out like last time. And this is only if you're using the recipe that I'm using, but then I add my last pound of corn cob that I'm going to add. And I'll get back with you after I add the corn cob. Okay, I've added 1 pound of corn cob. And your last step is very simple. You just want to take your grain, or in my case, grain and corn cob, and you want to soak it in hot water. Well, the water is going to cool down, obviously, but start the water off hot. And you're going to soak it for at least 6 hours, and I would recommend doing it overnight. It's about 7 o'clock right now, and I'm going to leave it till tomorrow morning, till about 9 or 10 o'clock, so a good 12 hours is probably the best, but I've done it as little as 6 hours and had good success, so 6 hours is good. 12 hours is better. That's pretty much your last step of this phase of making the spawn. And on part 2, I'll show you how to sterilize your spawn to prepare it for the spawn transfer. Alright, thanks.